For my parents' generation, apocalypse was contained within a briefcase with nuclear launch codes. And for my generation, apocalypse is within a hamburger or a plane ticket. It's democratized, and it's something that belongs to each of us. And how we think about that apocalypse, how we look at it, how we bring it into our bodies and our families and our work, that matters. Because when we imagine the end of the world and act on that imagination, we are, consciously or not, building the future world that we're going to inherit. My name's Stephen Lezack. I'm a geographer at the Scott Polar Research Institute, and I study the politics of the climate frontier in the Arctic. We still talk about Arctic explorers and Arctic expeditions when much of the landscapes up there have been inhabited for millennia. The way that it's changed is that instead of now going to view this landscape that's supposed to be so different, utterly different from our own homelands, we go there and we see projections of our own future. This comes across in popular media in particular, the way that we talk about Arctic futures as implicitly our own futures. And so Arctic explorers today, they're not just explorers over land, but we also think of them as explorers through time. One headline that always stands out to me appeared in a newspaper a couple years ago, and it said, "The Arctic is in a death spiral." And it struck me at that point, what does it mean for an entire region of the planet to be dying? And who are we as humans to pronounce what is life and what is death for that whole place? We have to understand that climate apocalypse is not something that happens to the whole world. It's already happening to certain communities in certain places. And yet, for these communities that are on the climate frontier, these frontline communities, it doesn't look like their world is ending. It actually looks like their world is changing into a radically different place. Where apocalypse invites inaction or surrender, climate change, actually experienced on the front lines, is a call to action. It's a call to build new homes. It's a call to do things as mundane as build infrastructure. But there's no waiting for something on the horizon. For these communities, they have to act now and they need support now. And we only do them a disservice if we keep projecting out into the future, waiting for the next shoe to drop. This is a very consistent extension of the colonialism that has taken place for hundreds of years in the Arctic. What began with whaling and continued to gold mining and later to oil and gas extraction always saw the Arctic as a resource. It was always an unpeopled landscape, and the people there were an inconvenience to be either ignored or moved. This happened for centuries, and the intergenerational trauma faced by Indigenous Arctic people today is extremely real and has huge consequences on livelihoods and communities. There's one community called Nutak, which is a village of about 300 people that's built on collapsing permafrost. The village is already having to relocate to a new site several miles away, but they were only able to secure funding to move about half of the village. And so as we speak, this is a community that has essentially cut itself in half. The people at the new village site are waiting, requesting funding from the government to be able to build the remaining homes that are required so that their friends and their relatives in this small Yupik community are able to join them. And the question that I tend to ask people, because I ask myself this same question, is could I imagine this same displacement happening in, say, Louisiana? And the answer I always come to is no. There's something about the Arctic and the distance and our thoughts about it that we allow to justify the suffering that other people experience in these landscapes. It gives us permission to turn away from these livelihoods and not take responsibility for their needs in the present. We have to make sure that climate change is catalytic and not conservative. And when we are hung up on ideas about global apocalypse, then we put ourselves in a mindset where we're trying to save something. And what we end up trying to save ends up usually being the world circa 2007, which was not a great world for many billions of people. That's why it's so important to, alongside the grief and the loss and the mourning, to think about the world that we're trying to build at the same time. This is not just a world without climate change, but it's a world after climate change.